Max Carter, a woman with bright, sparkling eyes and confidence radiating from every step, descended from her luxury car, gently closed the door behind her, and reached for her small suitcase. Although accustomed to lavish environments, the grandeur of the Grand Aurelia still left her with an undeniable sense of awe. This hotel was not just an architectural masterpiece, but a symbol of power and sophistication. The towering fountain at the entrance stood like an artistic masterpiece, proudly reflecting the straight lines of palm trees reaching up to the blue sky, while every detail, from the delicate petals on the long, slender chandeliers, was meticulously crafted. She couldn't oppose. T helped but stop for a moment, standing there, listening to the subtle sounds of the city blending with the gentle murmur of the flowing water. Max had walked into countless luxury hotels throughout her career and life. Yet, this place made her feel something entirely different. Everything around her seemed too perfect, too stifling, as if everything was framed within an extravagant space with no room for anyone else, especially someone who did not belong to this world. Max smiled to herself, fully aware that she was not the type of person to be easily overwhelmed. She had been in New York and Apos, glittering hotels, luxury castles in Paris, but the atmosphere here left her feeling somewhat unsettled. She walked confidently into the lobby, her eyes sharp with focus, searching for a quiet space to relax after her long business trip. It felt like all eyes in the room were on her, not because she stood out, but because, among the thousands who had walked through here, she probably looked different. She wore simple black jeans and a light sweater, not expensive nor flashy. The other guests, dressed in impeccable outfits and carrying luxury handbags, eyed her with curiosity, a touch of skepticism, as if she were an outsider in a space where she didn't belong. At the front desk, Max smiled and struck up a conversation with Ryan Hayes, the receptionist, a middle-aged man in a luxurious suit with a solemn expression. Ryan looked at her for a moment, quickly scanning the information on the screen before him, then paused, his expression shifting to one of mild discomfort. End quote. I and Oppos. Am sorry, Ms. Carter, but I can't end Oppos. Find your reservation, end quote. He said, his voice low and somewhat cold. Max looked up at him, showing no sign of panic or confusion. This was not the first time she had encountered such unexpected situations. End quote. There must be some mistake, end quote. She said, gently handing over her credit card and adding, end quote, I booked the room last week through the online system. End quote. Ryan said nothing more but simply scrolled back and forth on the screen again. Max could sense his unease. But what she felt was not the inconvenience of not finding the reservation, but the attitude he was showing toward her. An impatient, hurried demeanor with a touch of disdain, as if she didn't deserve to be here. She could clearly sense that this was not just a technical glitch. This was discrimination, something invisible, yet as obvious as a thin fog surrounding the space. Max calmly nodded and stood still for a moment, saying nothing. She wasn't in a rush. She had learned to listen to the smallest sounds of silence, especially in moments like this. A second passed, then two. Max and Oppos' eyes remained on Ryan, trying to read something from the tension in his movements, from the quick glance he made when she mentioned the name in quote, Carter, end quote. Finally, after a few more clicks, Ryan nodded slightly and gestured for her to wait while he went to find help. Max stood still, a feeling of discomfort gradually spreading within her. She wasn't in Oppos. Surprised, nor was she overly shocked. Every time she stepped into such luxurious spaces, she felt something different, something that pushed her to the margins, though she never voiced it. And this time, it seemed that Ryan, or more accurately, the atmosphere around this place, was proving that racial discrimination, though well hidden, still existed in a way that Kuden and Oppos TB denied. Max didn't need to show outrage. She had learned that overreacting only diminished true power. But she also knew that nothing would change unless she took action now. She took a deep breath, deciding that this encounter would not just be a small event during a business trip. This would be the moment she would change this environment, create a space where no one would be looked down upon, where fairness would not be a distant concept. With calm composure and boundless patience, Max walked away, awaiting change and realizing that she had just stepped into a new battle. Max Carter was not the type of person to be easily defeated by challenges. On the contrary, she always knew how to view every situation as an opportunity to bring about change. After the incident at the front desk of the Grand Aurelia, where she realized that not only was there an issue with her reservation, but also a latent discrimination existing in this luxurious space, she felt a strong urge within herself. Nothing in Max's life was meaningless, and she couldn't let such a minor incident pass without action. She stepped out of the hotel, not with frustration or dissatisfaction, but with a calmness and strange determination. The sky was a deep blue, the sunlight shining brightly over the city, yet inside her, a storm was quietly brewing. The sense of injustice she had just experienced was not just a personal incident, but a sign of a bigger issue. She couldn't stop thinking about the other guests who might have gone through similar situations, people who would never have the opportunity to fight back. And she decided that if no one else would do something about it, she would be the one to stand up and make a change. That evening, when she returned to her luxurious apartment in the city center, Max sat at her desk, her eyes glued to the computer screen. Although her schedule was packed with meetings and major projects, she couldn't erase the thoughts from her mind. Everything in her life was meticulously planned, and if she saw a problem, she would find a way to fix it. This wasn't a minor issue. This was about fairness, about how society judged people based on appearance and background. And the Grand Aurelia, with all its luxury and fame, was the very symbol of that division. Max leaned back in her chair, holding a glass of red wine, her mind drifting back to the thoughts of the morning. She remembered every detail of that encounter. Ryan Hayes' gaze when he looked at her, the coldness in his voice, the look of disdain as if she didn't meet the standard to be welcomed. And she knew if nothing was done, that discrimination would forever exist. She couldn't stand by, she couldn't ignore it. She stood up, walked through the living room, her hands clenching as if to steady her resolve. "I have to do something," she muttered. Great decisions in life are always made in moments like this, when feelings of helplessness and injustice turn into powerful motivation. Max knew that nothing would be easy, and she didn't want to follow the path others had taken. She wanted to make a difference. When Tess, Max's assistant, called the next morning, her voice filled with concern, sensing a change in her boss's mood. Max hadn't answered the phone immediately, but only sent back a short message. "We need to change the Grand Aurelia." Tess knew Max well and immediately understood that this wasn't a rushed statement or a spur-of-the-moment decision. She didn't ask further questions, just nodded and began preparing the next steps. Within an hour, Max had a meeting set up with Ben, her lawyer, a person she always trusted with sensitive legal matters. He was sharp, able to analyze situations keenly, and Max knew that to execute her plan, she would need his help. At Ben's office, Max laid out her detailed plan. End quote. "I want to buy the Grand Aurelia," end quote. She said, her eyes filled with determination. End quote. "I won't just change the operations. I want to make it a symbol of inclusion and fairness. No one here should be discriminated against. We're going to change everything." End quote. Ben stared at her for a long moment, his expression unchanged. He knew that Max's decisions were never frivolous. She never acted without purpose. And when she made up her mind, nothing could stop her. You want to buy the entire hotel? Ben asked, his eyes widening in surprise. Exactly. I'll buy it and restructure it completely. Not just the appearance, but the culture and operations as well. Max continued, her voice steady, filled with a powerful drive, without a hint of doubt or fatigue. Ben emphasized once more, but you know this won't be easy, right? Max smiled, not to reassure him, but to reaffirm her own unshakable belief. And quote, I know exactly what I want, and I'm certain this will change everything. End quote. Immediately after a meeting with Ben, Max instructed Tess to contact financial experts and banks to finalize the purchase of the Grand Aurelia. Soon, all the plans were set in motion, and Max never looked back or hesitated. She believed in the change she was about to bring, and she knew that a major battle was beginning. In the days that followed, Max continued with her busy schedule, but part of her mind was always focused on the progress of her plan. Everything was starting to fall into place as she had mapped it out, but she also knew challenges were ahead. She didn't expect everything to go smoothly, and it was these challenges that would give her the opportunity to prove that this change was not just a simple decision, but a revolution in the environment she had chosen. When news of Max Carter's acquisition of the Grand Aurelia was officially announced, not only the staff, but the media was taken aback. Interviews and questions poured in, but Max never fell into the trap of over-explaining. She simply said, I want to create a space where everyone is welcome, without racial, ethnic, or any other form of discrimination. That's why I decided to make this change. And so began Max's journey, with a decision that no one could have imagined before. Max Carter was no stranger to facing challenges. She knew that changing something that had existed for a long time, especially a large institution like the Grand Aurelia, would never be easy. But she also understood that significant changes often met with strong resistance. And that resistance didn't only come from the outside. It also came from within the organization itself. On the first day that she officially took over the hotel, the atmosphere in the Grand Aurelia shifted. While she couldn't immediately perceive it, there was a palpable tension hanging over this opulent space. Max stood in her office, looking out the window as the city outside hurried along with its fast-paced rhythm. But here in this room, change had begun. A few employees had realized that Max's presence was not just a minor adjustment. This became evident during Max's first meeting with the hotel's managers. She sat at the center of the table, the light above her casting shadows, looking into the faces of those who were all too familiar with the old system of the hotel. They were the ones who had worked here for many years, the ones who had contributed to the image Max wanted to change. And in that silence, she could feel their unease. Kate, the longtime hotel manager, was the first to speak. She was a woman with a poised appearance, always maintaining a professional attitude, but Max could sense the discomfort from the way Kate looked at her. Although Kate didn't express it outwardly, her questions full of skepticism made the atmosphere in the room tense. And quote, with all due respect, Mrs. Carter, I don't understand why we need to change what has been maintained for so many years. We've always maintained the highest quality, and our customers are always satisfied. End quote. Kate said, her tone revealing her displeasure. Max realized that, for Kate and the long-standing employees like her, any change was seen as a threat. Max didn't let this resistance shake her. She looked Kate straight in the eye, her voice cold but full of conviction. End quote. The quality that you've maintained may not always equate to fairness and inclusion. I want this hotel to be a place where everyone feels respected and not discriminated against. We cannot continue maintaining an environment where racial discrimination or disrespect exists. End quote. Her words made the atmosphere even heavier. Max knew she had just disrupted the calm of a system that people like Kate had built over the years. But this did not make her retreat. On the contrary, it made her feel more confident that she was heading in the right direction. Soon after, Ryan Hayes, the receptionist Max had met earlier, once again displayed resistance. He wasn't just a receptionist, but one of the influential figures in his department. One day, Max happened to catch him in the hallway, talking with some other employees. Ryan's voice rang out with arrogance. And quote, "Do you really think, Mrs. Carter, that you could change a hotel like this? You don't know, people don't easily change long-established habits." End quote. Max couldn't help but notice the defiance in Ryan's words. That evening, Max sat alone in her office, her hand idly twirling a pen, the dim light casting shadows on the documents in front of her. She couldn't let Ryan and Kate's words affect her. They could resist, but they couldn't stop her from achieving her goal. She decided to invite Harris, a diversity and inclusion expert she had worked with before, to join the project. She knew that implementing training programs on diversity and inclusion wasn't just about changing processes. It was about changing the mindset of each individual. And to do this, she needed the help of people who truly understood the issue. From the very first meeting with Harris, Max felt the perfect synergy between them. Harris was calm and intellectual, with a deep ability to analyze problems. And quote, "To change a place like this, we have to start with the basics, with the people in the hotel. We can't just change the processes without changing their way of thinking," end quote, Harris said. Max nodded, knowing she had found the right person to stand by her side in this battle. Soon after, Max and Harris began planning detailed training programs on diversity and inclusion. She invited key employees to attend these sessions, not only to impart knowledge, but also to listen to the stories, perspectives, and truths that they had kept hidden. Max understood that change couldn't happen just through a simple decision. It had to be nurtured in the minds of every individual. However, resistance was not easily extinguished. Kate, as the long-standing manager, continued to express her dissatisfaction. She tried every possible way to reduce the effectiveness of the training programs, such as scheduling sessions at times when employees didn't need to attend or even deliberately undermining the seriousness of the training sessions. These small actions, although subtle, created an invisible wall in the hearts of the staff, making them begin to question the purpose of the change. Max was undeterred. She decided to take more decisive action. She organized a direct meeting with all the employees, asking them to share their thoughts and feelings about the changes taking place. She didn't just want to hear praise or support. She wanted them to truly understand the goals and importance of this change. During the meeting, Max shared her own story of facing discrimination and unfairness, and why she was determined to create a space where everyone was treated fairly. That meeting didn't just change the thoughts of a few individuals. It was a wake-up call for those who were resisting. Resistance was no longer the issue. The employees understood that this wasn't a personal battle, but an opportunity for them to contribute to something greater. Gradually, the skeptical looks began to change. Those who were once closed off or even opposed started to realize that this change wasn't just for Max, but for the hotel and for the values it would bring to society. And with each passing day, the resistance within the organization began to melt away, making way for collaboration and trust in a new future. Max Carter was well aware that the road ahead would never be easy. However, she never imagined that the internal resistance would be this strong. Despite promising training sessions and strong commitments from key staff members, when faced with real change, not everyone could keep up with the pace she set. And the great challenges were gradually unfolding. The morning after the important meeting, Max stepped into the hotel and immediately sensed the difference in the atmosphere. Everything seemed to have changed, but at the same time, it hadn't in Opos. T changed it all. The staff members she had met earlier were still working, still talking and laughing, but there was a quietness, an invisible distance between them and her. The glances that didn't meet hers, the hesitant gestures. Everything felt like a thin veil concealing the truth happening right before her eyes. Especially Ryan Hayes, the receptionist she had met the first day. He always appeared cold, but today his silence seemed to carry a sense of caution, an empty stare, as if he were looking at her through a glass barrier. This made Max feel heavy inside, but she didn't let emotions take over. She had decided to keep moving forward, no matter what obstacles arose. A week after the crucial meeting, the signs of resistance could no longer be hidden. During a small meeting with the senior management team, Max realized something uncomfortable. Kate, the longtime manager, no longer displayed the respect she had before. While she still maintained a professional appearance, Max could sense the exhaustion, helplessness, and most notably, the bottled-up frustration in Kate's every word and gesture. It wasn't just Kate. A few other members of the management team also started showing signs of discontent. The debates grew increasingly heated. End quote. "We can't change everything overnight." End quote. Kate spoke up during one meeting. End quote. "We've built this hotel on a very specific standard, and now we are tearing apart everything that has made the Grand Aurelia famous. We can't change everything just because of a few training sessions." End quote. Max looked at Kate, at the other faces in the room. She understood that not everyone could see the broader vision she was pursuing. But she also knew that if she didn't change their mindset, if she didn't show them the importance of this change, all her efforts would be in vain. End quote. "No one is saying we have to change everything immediately, but we can't stop halfway." End quote. Max responded, her voice firm with determination. End quote. "What we are doing will make a huge difference. Don't let old habits and fears hold us back." End quote. Even so, Max knew that Kate and some others hadn't truly embraced what she was saying. The resistance didn't stop with the management team, especially with Ryan Hayes. She discovered that every time he appeared at the front desk, his attitude toward customers seemed to have subtly shifted. He still did his job, but Max could sense the lack of enthusiasm, the disconnection in his work. One day, when Max visited the front desk to check on the work, she found Ryan working with indifference, not paying attention to details as he normally did. Max decided she had to confront him directly. End quote. "Ryan, I want to talk to you about the way you've been working these past few days." End quote. Max began. Ryan turned around and looked at her with a cold gaze. End quote. "Miss Carter, I don't understand what you want from me. I'm doing my job. I don't see the problem." End quote. Max could feel the defensiveness in his response. She stepped closer, firm yet empathetic. End quote. "I don't just want you to work the way you always have. I want you to be more open, willing to change a little. If not, this hotel won't be able to grow. We need to make every guest feel welcome, not just because they pay us, but because they truly deserve respect." End quote. Ryan was silent for a moment, and then he finally spoke. End quote. "I'm not sure I can do things the way you want." End quote. Those words hit Max hard. She realized that it wasn't just Kate and the management team. Even employees like Ryan were at a crossroads, and not everyone was ready to follow the path she had laid out. But Max knew that if she let things go on like this, she would never create real change. She couldn't stop now. Max decided to take stronger measures to drive the change forward. She didn't just continue with the diversity and inclusion training programs. She also set up one-on-one meetings with the employees who were struggling. She understood that sometimes direct conversations would help people open up more than large meetings. A personal conversation would show them the seriousness of her determination and help them see that this change wasn't a top-down command, but an opportunity they could be part of. For Max, this wasn't easy, but she knew that if she didn't remain steadfast, this resistance would become a huge barrier to her mission of change. She had to face the reality that not everyone would be able to join her on this journey. But she wouldn't give up. She wouldn't let the hesitation or lack of resolve from a few individuals slow her down. Max Carter always knew that true change didn't come from merely replacing staff or implementing new strategies. Real change came from the minds and hearts of people. Although the training sessions had started to yield positive results, and some employees had gradually accepted the changes she was making, there were still cracks that hadn't been mended. The situation could not progress further without one essential element: empathy. Max understood that she couldn't force everyone to accept change. She needed to awaken the latent spirit of kinship in each person, that deep-seated connection we all can share if we look at each other not just with our eyes but with our hearts. One rainy morning, when Max arrived earlier than usual, she noticed a distinct shift in the atmosphere. The tension that had previously lingered in the hotel had started to dissipate, replaced by an openness, a lightness. Max passed by the reception area and saw Ryan Hayes chatting warmly with a customer. The light streaming through the window illuminated the happy, relaxed faces around him. She stood there for a moment, not wanting to interrupt the peaceful moment. Ryan, whom she had sensed distance and aloofness from before, was now smiling, warmly guiding the customer, speaking about the services with sincerity in every word. Max felt a sense of relief, as though a fog had lifted, leaving a clear, bright sky. After a moment of observation, Max walked over and spoke up and quote, "Ryan, I must say, I'm really glad to see you change like this," end quote. Ryan turned, offering a soft smile, slightly embarrassed but also proud. End quote. "Thank you, Max. I think I've realized something important over the past few days." End quote. He didn't say more, but the look in his eyes, full of trust and a touch of regret, made Max feel as though she had accomplished something significant. The next day, Max decided to host a small dinner at the hotel, inviting all the staff members who had been and were still involved in the transformation process. The dinner didn't feature any formal speeches, no presentations about strategies or the future of the hotel. It was simply an opportunity for everyone to sit together and share stories, the feelings they hadn't expressed in their daily work. Everyone attending the dinner had no particular expectations. They were simply following Max's request. But the atmosphere shifted throughout the evening. From simple stories about family, weekends, to conversations about worries and concerns that had never been shared, it seemed as though all the invisible walls were beginning to crumble. Max might not be an expert at organizing events, but she was exceptional at creating intimate spaces where people could drop their masks and truly connect. As the evening drew to a close, Max stood up, holding a glass of wine in her hand, and gently spoke. "Thank you all for coming and for everything you've done so far. I know that each of you has your own worries and struggles, but I believe that we can overcome everything together. What we are building here is not just a hotel, but a family." She paused for a moment, looking at each face around the table. No one spoke immediately, but Max could feel that everyone was thinking deeply. All the resistance, all the anxiety from before seemed to melt away. The eyes began to shine, and gentle smiles appeared on each face. These weren't smiles of embarrassment or politeness, but real, heartfelt smiles. The feeling Max had been striving to foster in each of them had started to become visible. After that dinner, a noticeable change took place throughout the hotel. Not only did the staff members begin to integrate more seamlessly, but even the guests could feel a warmth, a closeness that had never been present before. The interactions, the conversations at the front desk, the birthday wishes from staff, everything carried a profound sense of humanity, as if everyone had truly become a part of one another. Max realized that when people are no longer divided by invisible barriers, when they no longer look at each other with suspicion, real transformation can begin. She had not only created a friendly working environment, but she had also helped everyone at the hotel understand that they were not just colleagues. They were friends, united by the same goal. And in that moment, Max understood that what she had done was not just to build a hotel, but to build a family where everyone is respected, loved, and always ready to support one another. Max Carter stood before the window of her office, her eyes silently gazing at the neighborhood below, where the Grand Aurelia stood proudly. The view outside wasn't any different from the many days before, but today it held a different meaning. The feeling of having achieved something grand was not just about financial success or business accomplishments, but about a mission far greater. She had not only turned a successful hotel into a thriving business, but had also revived a new model, one where respect, inclusion, and diversity became its core values. On her desk, the financial report that she had been eagerly waiting for was finally completed. The numbers on the paper didn't fully tell the story behind them. Each profit, each growth figure represented the outcome of quiet struggles, tense meetings, but more importantly, the irreversible transformation of a team. The Grand Aurelia was no longer just a luxury hotel. It was a testament to change in the hospitality industry, where human values, acceptance, and mutual respect were not just theoretical concepts, but practical applications that benefited everyone involved. Max stepped out of her office and walked down the hotel corridor. Everything had changed. The spacious hallways and the luxurious lounge spaces no longer felt cold or distant. Instead, they radiated warmth that both customers and staff could feel. Everyone felt like they belonged in this space. No one was left out or cast aside. They were all part of a larger community, and that was exactly what Max had always aimed for. In the early days, when Max first acquired the Grand Aurelia, she knew the path ahead would not be easy. But from the moment she embarked on the reform process, she had made it clear that it wasn't just about the service or the facilities, but also about changing the way people viewed and treated each other within this hotel. The lessons about respect and inclusion that Max brought in were not just to follow a trend, but were the core of a socially conscious business. She believed that in any work environment, if these values weren't seriously implemented, success would only be a short-term illusion. Since the diversity and inclusion training programs were introduced, both old and new staff had started to view their work and their colleagues in a new light. What they realized wasn't the difficulty of the work or the mandatory changes to be made, but the real importance of the relationships within the working environment. They weren't just working for a luxury hotel. They were part of a larger community where every voice mattered and everyone could contribute to change. Max could not help but feel proud when she saw results that exceeded expectations. Customer satisfaction reports kept rising. Online reviews consistently reflected the noticeable improvements in service quality. Positive feedback wasn't only coming from the physical upgrades of the hotel, but mainly from the warm and friendly atmosphere that customers felt the moment they walked in. But for Max, the most important thing wasn't the numbers or awards, but the change in the hearts of the employees. One morning, she stood at the front desk, where everything had started. Ryan Hayes, having completely transformed his approach to work, was enthusiastically guiding a customer. Kate, who had once strongly opposed the changes, was now the first to suggest new ideas to make the hotel even more welcoming to guests. Every employee, regardless of their position, understood that they weren't just a cog in a machine. They were an integral part of the greater story Max was building. Max no longer needed to prove herself. All she needed to do was see that change unfold with each step, in every trusting glance from those around her. She no longer had to push or explain the importance of inclusion and respect, because now everyone could feel the profound value in the actions she and the team had taken together. Customers returning to the Grand Aurelia didn't just do so because of the excellent service or the luxurious environment, but because of the feeling they received when they entered the hotel. They felt the sincerity, the friendliness, and the warmth brought by the people working there. This was the legacy Max had created. Not just a hotel, but a new symbol for the hospitality industry, where human values and inclusion are prioritized. Max looked out the window, a smile curling on her lips. She knew that she had done something that few could achieve. And more importantly, she knew that the legacy she had built would not just be a part of the past, but a foundation for the future. Max stood before the window of her office, the dim light from the towering buildings outside filtering through the glass, creating a picturesque scene. But that light, beautiful as it was, could not compare to the light she felt within herself. Everything had changed. The Grand Aurelia was no longer just a financially successful hotel. It had become a symbol of the transformation Max had created. A transformation that was not just significant for the hospitality industry, but for everyone who had ever sought opportunity, fairness, and respect in both work and life. She looked at the employees working around her, smiling as she saw them enjoying their work, not because they had to, but because they genuinely loved what they were doing. These employees, whether they were managers, receptionists, servers, or drivers, understood that they were an indispensable part of a community where mutual respect wasn't just a principle, but a reality practiced every day. This wasn't something taught in lectures or found in books. It was born from their own shared commitment and effort, inspired by a leader who understood and trusted in the value of each person. Max never forgot the early days when she walked into the Grand Aurelia with the ambition to change something that had long been stagnant. She faced doubt, resistance, and even strong opposition. But those challenges only pushed her forward, encouraging her to continue not with words but with actions. Through her tireless work, by treating each employee as an individual who mattered, and by making decisions that reflected that belief, she began to reshape the very heart of the hotel. She knew it wasn't possible to change everything overnight, but step by step, the Grand Aurelia had become a place where guests didn't just stay to rest. They stayed because they felt respected. Every employee, no matter their position, felt they were part of a larger purpose. And the guests, coming and going, experienced a service not only based on physical comfort, but on sincerity, inclusivity, and from the hearts of those who worked there. The message Max wanted to impart was clear and profound. Respect and fairness are not things that can only be seen on paper or in grand speeches. They must be lived, woven into every small action of daily work. And that is not just an idealistic goal, but a reality that can be achieved if we all work toward it. Max Carter didn't just change a hotel. She created a business model where inclusion wasn't a slogan. It was a living reality. The Grand Aurelia had become a symbol of respect, of love for the work, and for people. And for Max, that was the legacy she wanted to leave for future generations. A reminder that a company,